Names and uses of individual pieces are what go a long way in really selling them to a customer. And while we have a ton of different products, great products that we sell in our store, what we really want to focus on are the most important. And the most important pieces that we really focus on, of course, are Cutco. More specifically, the pieces that come in our most popular set, the Homemaker set. So what are all those names and uses, and how can you do a better job of selling them? One way you can do that is by bridging. And this is the case for all pieces and all sets. This is really a key to selling sets in general, is tying the name and use of one product, what it can and can't do and be used for, into another. And that bridge connects your reason for owning both, and conveniently them coming in a set predetermined and put together. So let's start with the Homemaker pieces. There's 10 pieces: your paring knife, trimmer, your spatula spreader, your petite carver, your turning fork, your chopping knife, your bread knife, your butcher knife, and then your carving knife and carving fork. Okay, so your paring knife, it's a short, straight edge blade. It's got a long handle, which is maybe a little bit different for some people, especially if they've never had Cutco before. But what you want to hit on with the paring knife is, of course, what you use it for: peeling in your hand, in the air, cutting things in the air in your hand, like taking the tops off strawberries, eyes out of potatoes, getting the skin off, whatever it may be, or slicing something up. But the point is, the paring knife is not designed to be used on a cutting board. It's a thin, straight edge blade. It doesn't hold up well at all being used on a board, even ours. This is true for any paring knife. So the point you want to get across is, it's a great knife for this, this, and that, but it's not the type of knife you ever want to use on a board. So for that, in this set, you have your trimmer. Now the trimmer is your all-purpose utility knife. This is baseball-sized everything: tomatoes, potatoes, apples, oranges, lemons, limes, cooked chicken breast, corn off the cob. Baseball-size anything is what you'd want to use your trimmer for on the cutting board, whatever. And this is going to be, again, one of the most used knives in the set. Almost every Cutco customer that comes in our store owns a trimmer. Part of why we sell so many cheese knives, we compare the trimmer to the cheese knife. But for your new customer to Cutco, trimmer is a must-have. And then for some of your other utility purposes, or more so your baked goods, sandwiches, cakes, pies, brownies, lasagna, or just if your trimmer is dirty, your spatula spreader not only can spread things, but it's got a sharp cutting edge that you can use to slice, cut, and serve. So it's a great all-around type of piece. It's the first piece I cut myself on, so it's not to be toyed with. It is really, really sharp. But those are really your utility size pieces. So for bigger things, you need something like your petite carver. Petite carver is softball size everything. So the big brother of your trimmer: roast, cantaloupe, pineapple, just anything bigger that you need a longer serrated type of knife. If you are doing any sort of carving, you can use your turning fork as a petite carving set, but the turning fork is really designed for picking things up out of the bottom of a jar or turning things over in a frying pan, and you could certainly use it to hold things steady while you carve it, again, especially if it's on the smaller side. Next tool in your set would be your chopping knife. Now this is like your food processor. This is going to be chopping, dicing, mincing. This is carrots, celery, onions. Do you ever cut those types of things? Okay, those are another set of good questions to ask as you go through, is asking questions and knowing ahead of time what they use different things for, so you can specifically reference that. But the chopping knife is your all-around food processor: celery, carrots, onions, anything bigger that you need a big, long, straight edge knife. You can also potentially substitute this for the French chef, which is 9 1/4. So even bigger, gives you a lot more leverage and stability when you're chopping on your board. Next tool in your set would be your bread knife. There's times where having a long knife is important, but you need that long serrated, and so that's where your chopping knife maybe isn't the right tool. But having something like your long serrated bread slicer is great for your cakes, your angel food, loaves of bread. You could also use it potentially if you wanted to slice ham really, really thin, and maybe your petite carver, or if you didn't own the 9-inch carver, The bread slicer is great for slicing things really, really, really thin. And what makes a bread knife different is, unlike most knives where you're adding force, you're adding weight and pressure as you slice back and forth, with the bread knife, and bread in particular, you don't want to add a lot of pressure because that's how you smash the bread. So bread knives are notoriously long, and they don't even come to a point. They're very rounded off at the edge, and you're just letting the natural weight of the knife do the cutting as you use the full length blade sawing back and forth. But it's a very thin edge blade, and that's why a bread knife is supposed to be specific to bread and softer types of foods, which is why one of the last pieces in your set is your carving set. And I usually make the analogy that this is like your spare tire. It's that thing you spend money on that you never really use very often, but when you do need to use it, you're obviously happy you have it. And that's definitely your carving set, your 9-inch carver and carving fork. Those are the pieces you don't use every day, but your large turkey, your ham, your roast, if people smoke their own meats, those types of things, they see a value in that. And especially if this is coming off a holiday where they just struggled through carving a turkey or slicing a ham and just shredded it and ruined it, our carving set is the best. So paring knife, utility knife being the trimmer, spatula spreader, petite carver, your turning fork, your chopping knife, your bread knife, your carving set, and your butcher knife. Your butcher knife, which I like to refer to as a prep knife. Your prep knife is your raw meats, your melons, even somewhat your frozen meat. If you notice on the butcher knife, it's got a little bit of a flat area there at the top. And what that's for is so that you can press down through if you've got like a bone joint or just, again, some hard or still somewhat frozen meat. That's where that comes in handy. You know, the chopping knife, you're using the back third of the blade is where you're cutting through the food. With the butcher knife, you're using that front third, that curved part, to puncture down in through the skin or the flesh of whatever it is that you're cutting. It's great for baby watermelons. And again, all those prep type things where you're sectioning things up. And again, your raw meats, that's your heavy duty straight edge blade. It's kind of like a mini cleaver, if you will. So those are the 10 items that come in the Homemaker set. Some names and uses and some ability there of bridging those pieces together. And then, of course, you've got your table knives, which we do specifically refer to as table knives, not steak knives. Our steak knives are much bigger. The table knives are what we've had for 70 years. They cut steak beautifully, but the idea is they are the place setting knife. They are to be set out that you can use, yes, on steak, but also on your chicken breasts or tomatoes in your salad. And the Homemaker obviously has the option of 8 of those. And as you get to the bigger sets, you have the option, the customer rather has the option to upgrade to the steak knife. So those are all the pieces. Homemaker does, of course, come in the block. Comes with a medium-sized cutting board as well. Polypropylene, it's the perfect type of plastic cutting surface that we want to use any quality knives on to protect them for their longevity. So those are the names and uses, bridging those together and doing the same thing when you get to bigger sets as well as what you would do with smaller sets. The concept of here's a tool, here's what you can use it for, here's what it doesn't do as well on, but in order to fill that void, we have this piece in that set. Bridging that concept will help you sell a lot more sets, in addition to spot selling that we had talked about before, whereas you might be selling on the Homemaker, but you start mentioning pieces in the signature and or the ultimate, so that if somebody becomes interested by you mentioning the Hardy Slicer is great on squash, or the cheese knife is better than the trimmer, or the boning knife or salmon knife for smoking meat, and they start to catch on that way, now you've got some bait to dangle for the ultimate set or the signature set. But those are your names and uses for the Homemaker pieces, and a little bit on bridging.